Welcome to the explainer. So get this. What if an ancient practice, something we usually link with quiet meditation, could actually be the key to tackling one of the biggest, most frustrating challenges in modern learning? Today, we're diving into a really cool study that shows exactly that.
Okay, let's start with a feeling I bet you know all too well. You're looking at a page of text in another language and the words just blur. They become this intimidating wall of symbols. And then you feel it, that wave of panic, that sinking feeling that you're just never ever gonna get it. Sound familiar?
Well, it turns out that feeling has a name. It's called foreign language reading anxiety, and it is a massive hurdle for learners all over the world. It's also the focus of a groundbreaking study by Mojtaba Khatami that we're going to unpack today.
So researchers call this foreign language reading anxiety, or FLRA for short. And we're not just talking about a little bit of stress here. This is a specific kind of anxiety, a real psychological barrier that triggers some serious apprehension and negative feelings whenever you try to read in a new language. And believe me, this isn't just in your head. It shows up in very real ways. People will literally avoid reading altogether. It makes it almost impossible to concentrate. It fuels that negative voice in your head saying, "I'm just bad at this." And it can even cause physical stuff, like a racing heart. It actively shuts down our ability to learn.
And you gotta understand, for millions of students, the stakes are incredibly high. In a place like Bangladesh, which is where this study happened, being good at English is the ticket to getting into a good university or landing a great job. So this anxiety, it's not a small thing. It can literally hold people back in life. And that's exactly why this research is so important. So all of this led the researchers to ask a really powerful question. Could an ancient practice, mindfulness, actually be the solution to this very modern, very widespread educational problem? Okay, now when we say mindfulness, I want you to push aside any images of just sitting and emptying your mind. That's not what we're talking about here. The study focused on a very active type of mindfulness based on the work of psychologist Langer. It's all about actively seeking new things, being flexible in how you think, and being completely engaged in the present. Right? So it's less about chilling out and more like flexing a mental muscle. It's about choosing to be open, to be curious, and to be fully present with whatever is right in front of you, instead of just running on autopilot, which, let's be honest, is exactly where our brains go when anxiety kicks in. So how in the world do you test if this curious, active mindset can actually fight off reading anxiety? Well, the research team went right to the source. University students in Bangladesh who were learning English. And the way they did it was super clever. It was a two-part investigation, really. First, they got the hard data, the numbers. They surveyed 200 students to measure their levels of mindfulness and anxiety. But here's the cool part. They didn't stop there. They also collected personal stories through deep interviews and diaries to understand the why behind the stats. It's this mix of numbers and stories that makes the results so compelling. And what they found? Well, it was a connection so clear, so powerful, it could totally change how we think about teaching languages from the ground up. So after all that work, what did the data actually show? Well, the biggest finding of the whole study really comes down to this single dramatic number right here. So what does that number mean? It's actually pretty simple, and it's a huge deal. It shows a really strong negative connection. In plain English, that means as a student's level of mindfulness went up, their reading anxiety went way, way down. And we're not talking a small dip. This was a major, game-changing link. But wait, you might be thinking, what about other stuff? Like, does your gender matter? Or how good you already are at the language? Does that change anything? Well, the researchers looked into that too, and things got really interesting. And this is where their whole approach just gets so brilliant. Check this out. The raw numbers, the statistics, said that gender didn't really have a big effect on this whole mindfulness anxiety connection. But the stories told a totally different tale. In the interviews, students talked about their anxiety in really specific, nuanced ways that were tied to their gender. It's the perfect example of how numbers tell you what is happening, but it's the stories that tell you why. And these student stories really bring it to life, you know? They give us a peek into what this actually looks like. One student talked about how when their mind started racing, they would just focus on their breathing for a second. That little pause was enough to calm them down so they could actually focus on the words on the page. They were using these tools without even being told to. And you know what? It went way beyond just breathing. The interviews uncovered all these other smart strategies students were using. Things like cognitive reframing, where they would consciously change a negative thought like, I can't do this, into something more helpful. Or present moment awareness, where they'd tell themselves, okay, just focus on this one paragraph, not the whole scary chapter.
Okay, so this research is amazing. The findings are clear. But the big question is, what do we do with it? How do we take this discovery and turn it into a real tool that helps actual learners and teachers?
And this is really the core of it all. The big takeaway here is that mindfulness isn't just some fluffy wellness trend. It's a powerful metacognitive skill. That's a fancy way of saying it's a tool that helps you think about your own thinking. It's just as fundamental to learning as knowing how to take good notes or manage your study time. And the best part is the solutions, the things we can actually do in the classroom are super clear and you could start them like tomorrow. Teachers can build in short, mindful reading pauses. They can have students write in a journal about how they're feeling during the reading process. And most importantly, we can train teachers on how to weave these simple but incredibly powerful techniques right into their lessons. And that really leaves us with one last big idea to chew on. If a simple shift in how we pay attention, just being a little more mindful, can completely change how we face a difficult page of text, what other scary, overwhelming challenges in our lives could it transform? The skills we build to learn a new language might just be the very same skills we need to navigate life itself.